and welcome to Screen Time with today's Communiqué. I am so thrilled to have Miss Kymara Seals, longtime resident of Southeast Arkansas, longtime community and social justice advocate, to talk with us just a bit about voting, the voting process, and why it's so important to be involved in not only this year's election, but all elections. We know that November 3rd is right around the corner, and we want everyone to be informed and empowered when they go to the polls to vote. So welcome, Ms. Kymara Seals.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and just looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So speaking of the conversation, let's just jump in. So
Yeah.
tell us just a little bit about how you got started with social justice work and community advocacy.
Right. Well, it started back when I was growing up. I am from Hamburg, which is Southeast Arkansas. And my earliest remembrance of just service, period, just public service was at the age of 9. A tornado had swept through Hamburg, and the next morning I remember my mom singing, "Wake up, the Red Cross has made it to town, we gotta go." So that was my earliest remembrance. I was at 9, but years after, probably around 12 or 13, we were active. My mom was very active in her union. She was an educator. She was active with AEA as well as whatever the local education union is. My dad was a union person. He was worked for Georgia Pacific, and he was very actively involved in his union. So I grew up in a household that were union people, and we just believed in service. And so that is, and we believed in justice. It wasn't just service, it was service. But, I always found my parents in these conversations about justice and equity. My mom, later went on to become an equity coordinator in the school system. So I just grew up around it. So it's in my DNA.
It's in your DNA. And you mentioned an important point, that your parents included you in the conversation, because oftentimes back in the day, parents would say, kids have their place and the adults have their place,
right.
Grown folks talking, but
That's true.
Included you in the conversations as it related to community service and social justice work.
Right, that is true. Now, trust me, there were plenty of times when it was like, okay, this is a grown folk conversation.
Right.
But when it came to that type of work, we were engaged. Our parents, it was my sister and I that grew up in the household, and they would take us. Voting was a family event.
Yeah.
And we remember our parents sitting around talking about who they were voting for. Just like it was like, okay, here's the plan. We're getting ready. We're going to vote tomorrow at 2:00 or whatever. Here's the plan, and they would sit down and go through who they were voting for, and we would be right there. And we went to the polls with them to vote, and so they did include us, and that's why. We were, so engaged and so tentative, is because, and even understand that even conversations we weren't a part of, I would ear hustle. And because I remember the strike, they went on, Georgia Pacific, and it was a big deal. It was months and months and months, and it impacted, the family budget and all of that. So we got to learn a lot of lessons about taking a stand for what's right, and even if you have to suffer some consequences that are uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. That's so important. I want us to dig a little bit deeper on that. So as a longtime resident of Southeast Arkansas, what are some of the topics that are front of mind in your conversations with people on a daily basis as we get around to not only election day, but just in everyday conversations? What's important? What are they talking about?
Yeah, well, one of the things I hear repeatedly is job opportunity. And, we have to be in a position where we have a university, the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff here in Pine Bluff. And we also have CR College. And, we have, when these students graduate, you know, we need to be prepared to, to have something to attract that talent here to Pine Bluff. And so job opportunity is one of the big things that we hear over and over and over. Now, we do have the casinos coming in, the casino coming in, and I know it's supposed to employ thousands of people. I don't know a lot about it, but it's not going to capture that collegiate level talent probably that we're looking for, but it will supply jobs, and it should be an economic boost for our region. So we're I wasn't a supporter of the casino, but I do pray that it does well so that people can have those economic opportunities. Another issue is public safety. Everywhere we go, we're hearing public safety. We're in conversations right now, talking about what is it that we can do as citizens here in Pine Bluff to, to prevent and crime, and to have some type of intervention and prevention programs. We're in the process now of putting together a community survey. So we've had several conversations, and that came about after there was a shooting here in Pine Bluff, and there were about 7 people that were shot at a service station. And so, and of course, we had issues before that, don't get me wrong, but I think that may have been the catalyst that brought us together. And so we're having conversations talking about what we as everyday ordinary citizens can do is an issue. And education would be the third issue. We are concerned about education in Pine Bluff. We do have some issues here. We have 3 school districts in this community where we've been losing population for quite some time now. We've been taken over by the State Department of Education, and there are some questions about the quality of education that our students are receiving. And of course, now we're in a pandemic, so it makes it even more challenging, making sure students are learning, and those that are virtual, logging in and doing the work. So education, I think, would be a third one that we could talk more about maybe at a later time, but very passionate about it.
You mentioned 3 main topics that are kind of buzzing in Pine Bluff and Southeast Arkansas: job opportunities, the education, public safety. How do all of those tie in to voting and getting out to the polls and making sure people go out and express their voice and use their voice to vote?
Right. Well, that's a good question. Now, before I say, allow me to say this before I say the voting piece, because we've been taking the census for months and months and months. Okay, we have been begging people to take the census, and we know how important the census is, because it's tied. Those dollars are tied directly to representation within our area. It's tied to education. It's tied to our healthcare systems. And so the big thing, and I know probably that by the time this air, the census will be over. It may already be over. I think we got a few extra days, but the census is also so very important, and it only happens every 10 years. So. But voting is critically important. And let me say this, over the years, I've always heard this is the most important election of your lifetime. I mean, I grew up hearing my parents, my grandparents, and family say, you've got to vote. This is the most important election of a lifetime. And of course we vote, don't get me wrong. But here I am now saying, okay, y'all, you've got to vote. This is the most important election of your lifetime, and it's just so much at stake. It's so much at stake. And I want to start with the judicial piece.
Okay.
Because we don't talk about that enough. Now, I know with the recent death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we have been having that conversation. But just too many people are disconnected from understanding that it is the President of the United States and the Senate who confirms these lifetime appointments. And I worked for a member of Congress for 12 years, so I got to see the inside workings of that and how it happens. And we've got to do a better job educating just the average ordinary citizen who's not making that connection. We're in a place where, we could possibly be looking at a Supreme Court that's imbalanced for the next 30 years or so, and or that's stacked with conservative judges, and so that's important. But we've got to make the connections.
How do we make those connections?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, how do we make those connections?
It's been a challenge. I've been actively engaged I'm 50 for all of my adult life. I've been engaged even in my teenage years, but it wasn't until later that I really started paying attention to judicial races, which was like mid-20s then. But most of the people I talk to just, they'll skip judicial races. They're helping people understand how judges impact our lives. Same with prosecuting attorneys or district attorneys. That is one of the most powerful groups in the state. And because if they have the power and the authority to charge people. I worked in that system 5 years. I saw the inequities. I left before I got fired because I was calling out inequities. So it's that was my first job out of college. So I've got to see a lot of that stuff firsthand, and that's why I'm so passionate about the work I do. I see the injustices, I see the inequities, I see the systemic racism. I see these power structures, and too many people just go along to get along.
You mentioned prosecuting attorneys, local judges, and things like that. And there's a saying out there that says, all politics is local. So do you believe it to be true?
You know what? I believe that. Let me tell you something. I'm glad you brought that up. I do believe all politics are local. And that's why we must pay attention to every office, from school board, justice of the peace, because all of that is local, okay? And you have to have let me see how to say this. You have to have that strong foundation, but that foundation also needs to be embedded with justice. And when you get people in those local positions that have these biases, they have, biases against people, that's where the problem starts. That's where the problem starts. We need to do a better job of vetting all of our candidates, all of them, and asking tough questions. And one of the things I want to see us do is hold these elected officials accountable.
Have you found that in your conversations with people surrounding the topic of voting or just being involved in social justice issues, are
Mm-hmm.
there issues that more women are concerned with or identify with versus men and vice versa? Or is it about the same, do you think?
Well, you know what? Honestly, it's probably about the same, but here's what I can say. We have far more women speaking up in this community than we do men.
Okay.
And we we have this we've started these real talk roundtable conversations, and we have a good group. The first one we had 34 people who registered, because you have to register. We don't do it on open Facebook, but
Okay.
you have to register. And we had like 28 to show up. Well, only about 6 were men.
Wow. Okay.
But we see that everywhere, right? I mean,
Right.
we see it in our churches, in our faith community, in our synagogues, and everywhere. It's the women. It's the women who take the lead. It's the women who take the reins.
Yes.
And a majority of the time now. And I'm gonna tell you now, I'm one of these. I'm kind of old fashioned now. I I would love for a man to come and say, "Sister, we got this."
Yeah.
Y'all, you know what I'm saying? I am, I know some of my feminist friends may have a fit, but I am like okay with that. I would be totally okay with that. But I don't mind being a leader. I
Okay.
don't mind. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, God has anointed me to do the work I do.
Yes.
And I speak that. I speak it. I know it. He enables me to do it.
For sure.
And so I do accept that responsibility. We want voters to be informed.
Right.
One of the things I'm concerned about that was brought to my attention that I never even thought about this, but someone on one of our NAACP political action calls brought to my attention that there's a lot of people out there who are first-time voters
Okay.
who are intimidated.
Okay.
So one of the things I'm thinking about doing this, and I've got to. I'm getting over COVID, so I'm just now trying to get back into the swing of things.
Yes.
But one of the things I'd like to do is a education piece on the ballot.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like have a sample ballot, do
Yeah.
an education piece on that. I can do Zoom, Facebook Live, because one of the things, like when you go to vote, just obviously at the top is the president.
Right.
So most people will go in looking for either Biden, Harris, or Trump, uh, Pence, right?
Right.
Well, there's 13. There
That's
are 13
right.
candidates in the state of Arkansas
Right.
that made the ballot. And so for a first-time voter, that can be intimidating.
Yes. And overwhelming.
And just think, if they go in, they don't know there's 13 choices. They're going in looking for their candidate.
Right.
Probably their Democrat candidate or the Republican candidate, and then there's 13 choices. That could be intimidating. And so I think that's one of the things I'd like to see done. And I'm probably going, if it gets done, I'm gonna probably have to do it myself.
Yes.
Chances are, So, and I have my own Zoom license, and I can do a Zoom and Facebook Live, just to share information, We've got 3 ballot initiatives. People need to be informed, and we did do a form about those to talk about the 3 that's on there, but there's one on there that was struck from the Supreme Court struck it off, and so it won't be counted. It's still on there. So it's just we just need to do more education.
And I'm glad you mentioned that about doing an education piece about the ballot, because it's very important that people vote not only just for the president, but for everything else that's listed
down ballot, exactly.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. So, and I've shared that. I've put something together and I've sent it out to people who ask,
Okay.
and they'll say, "Well, I didn't know, this position." Like, yeah, that position's up. That position is up, or this position is up, and so I just, my desire is that voters are informed. Vote how you want to, but vote, be informed.
Yes.
And I'm a stickler for that. And I always have been that way. But that's because that's the way I was raised.
Right.
That's the way, and that's the way I raised my kids. They would go into the ballot with us. I mean, into the booth with us when they were coming up, and that's just, and I'll never forget my son that is now deceased. He had decided on somebody he was going to vote for that I hadn't planned on voting for. And I said, well, no, son, I said, no, this is mama's ballot now. He said, well, you vote for him. I'm going to vote for this person. I said, baby, it doesn't work that way. And it was just, but he was so sincere.
Right. So what do you think is, why do you think that it is so important to vote? From the historical aspect, do you think that we've lost that history that goes behind, getting the right to vote and using our power to vote? I think a lot of people have said, that our ancestors fought, bled, and died for that right. And so do you think that there's some voter apathy right now? And how can we overcome that?
Yes, there's voter apathy. And again, you have people who think their vote doesn't matter. I hear people all the time saying they
Right.
are going to do what they want to do anyway.
Mhm.
So I say, who are they? The government. So I do talk to people when I hear that and explain to them campaigns I've been engaged in that won by 17 votes, won by 3 votes, and things like that. So it goes back to educating the electorate
Yes.
on the importance of voting. Now, I certainly talk about us having the right to vote
Right.
and how we got the right to vote and how our people died fighting for us to have the right to vote.
Yes.
And I dare them to talk about voting doesn't matter.
Right.
I am radical, I am aggressive, but at the same time, I try to help people understand this is what happened. I have some visuals I show people
Okay.
that our ancestors went through just for us to have the right to vote.
Yes.
The poll tax, I talk about those things. We are not that far removed from the poll tax,
Right.
okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And let me just give you an example. When you look at Florida passed, and I don't know if it was a ballot initiative. I know it didn't come from the legislature, I don't think, but felons
Right.
could have their right restored,
Right.
once they were off paper, as we say. But they came back with Florida legislators
Yes.
came back with saying, okay, you can have the right to vote after you're off paper, but all fines, fees, and some other stuff, had to be paid. That's a poll tax, in essence, okay, in essence. Now, I know there were some philanthropy billionaires, sports people, professional sports people who came to the rescue with millions, billions of dollars and cleared the rolls for, I think they said 31,000 people back on the rolls. But that particular legislation was a very good example of what a poll tax does.
Yes.
You know, we have voter suppression activities that are constantly happening in all of our communities.
Yes.
Sometimes they are very subtle, and sometimes they're not so subtle. And I'm gonna tell you, I talk to my white allies and explain to them
Yes.
what voter suppression is. Some know, some act unlearned,
Yes.
uh, as if, why do we always talk about voter suppression? Voter suppression is real.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we are witnessing that in the city of Pine Bluff. We're 70% African American, but we are still witnessing voter suppression activities.
Wow.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's real. It's real. So, you know, I try to help my white friends understand some of the plight we go through just by because of the hue of our skin color, the hue of our skin, rather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and these challenges are real. We don't exaggerate them. And I know I'm talking about voting here,
Yes.
but yeah, you asked me about the apathy. It's there,
Yeah.
and we're constantly fighting it. We are constantly fighting it
Well,
and
that's
encouraging people to vote and trying to give them a reason to vote.
right.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes I can get off into some other topics that you know that'll take us other places. You know.
But one final question for you.
Uh huh.
Why do you vote?
Girl. uh, let me tell you, my great great grandmother would roll over in her grave if I didn't vote. But seriously, I know it is my civic duty
Yes.
to vote.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
I understand the price that was paid for me to have the right to vote.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I understand it. I have, you know, I have read it, studied it. I get it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, so I vote because I know that it is my civic duty to vote, and it is that. I mean, I was brought up that way. I was brought up in a family, but I teach voting.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I'm always. I keep in my car right now. I have 3 clipboards
Okay.
and voter registration forms
Yes.
and black ink pens.
Yes.
I know the deadline passed yesterday, but I'm just telling you how I live, right? This is how I roll.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've got one here in the house.
Yes.
That's the way I roll. You never find me without voter registration forms. I mean, year round.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, we've got to register people to vote,
Right.
you know, and so I vote because it is my civic duty and I understand the price that was paid for me to have that right.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I don't care what color anybody is. I don't care their socioeconomic status, uh, what side of the track they were born on, if they're a billionaire, millionaire, or somebody like me.
Mhm.
We all have one vote,
Yes, ma'am.
and I use it.
Oh, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. Well, Miss Kymara Seals, I want to say thank you so much for all the
Thank you.
wisdom that you have just dropped on us today. And
Well, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this.
yes, ma'am. And hey, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. All right.